Start things off, I'm going to turn the program over to a very special VIP speaker. He is the founder of our heavyweight premier sponsor, the Yared Foundation. He is also a welcome part of our family, a member of the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame class of 2011. Please welcome to induct our next member, Mr. Steve Yared.
Thank you so much. What a great honor. And I want to thank, first of all of you for being here, Butch, Kathy, Bob. This is an exception to the rule. We don't usually give speakers the benefit of introducing some of you great inductees, but Fred asked me to do it, and I kind of owe Fred. So they gave me 5 minutes. I won't exceed it. I don't know what it is about boxing. I think it's just the love of the game, except for those people who have done it, it's not just a game. I see Buddy McCollum, my favorite champ over there. I mean, I see so many great people in boxing. Dr. Gigino, to listen to you talk about your uncle, what a moving experience. But my father was a boxer. And so at 3 years old, he gave me my first set of boxing gloves and showed me how to lose. I never had the benefit of winning. He was 27-0 in the Pacific Theater as a heavyweight. But I did learn something about courage. And I did learn something about integrity and about honor. And so for all of you, I want to make this a little bit bigger than just my dear friend who I'm going to introduce with specifics. I just want to read something to you and see if it rings a bell, because I think surely most of you, life is not about boxing. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again. Because there's no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. So to you inductees, God bless you and congratulations. Now for Fred, my buddy. Fred Levin may not be known to some of you. I've known Fred for many, many years. You may recall the name because the University of Florida Law School is named the Fred Levin University of Florida Law School. Out of the kindness of his heart, he decided to give him $10 million, and they decided they ought to name the school after him. It offended a lot of people, but it was the largest gift in Florida's history. The University of Florida in 90 years never had a gift such as that. So when people called me up and said, maybe you ought to talk to him about that, that's kind of an ego trip, I would always ask them how much they were willing to give our students up there in law school. That's not why he's being inducted here. Fred's legal career is much aligned. I'm a trial lawyer as well, and Fred said to make sure, he was actually going to write my speech for me. But I told him I didn't have 3 hours, and I also told him that there was a lot of praise in there, like he wanted me to start off by saying the greatest trial lawyer in the country. And I said, well, I really can't say that because Shelley Schlesinger's here and I'm here, so I can say you're one of the 3 greatest trial lawyers in the country. He didn't like that either. But I want to tell you that Fred Levin was the one that called me up and said, this is forget the boxing for a second. He said, Steve, I've got a deal for you. We're going to take on Big Tobacco, the cigarette cartel. He said, little problem, in 58 years of litigation, they've never lost. They're like 800-0. I know your parents both died of smoking-related illnesses. Are you interested? And I said, sure, I'm in. And then everybody in my world, when I say everybody, everybody said I was crazy. And Fred said, no, you're not crazy. We're going to win. Fast forward 5 years and several million documents and many, many depositions and everybody ridiculing us and making fun of us and saying we were going to sue the Burger Kings next and the McDonald's. Fast forward that. We got $13 billion for the state of Florida, largely because he picked the very best lawyers to walk the planet Earth, Shelley and 11 others, or 10 others, and we beat them. But here's a world you've got now with airbags and seat belts and all that. We didn't have that before lawyers. We didn't have that world. Okay, we had a far different world. And the world we had before this case included Joe Camel, the Marlboro Man, billboards next to our elementary schools, television commercials aimed at 10 and 12-year-old kids to get them hooked before they knew any better, and generation after generation paying about 450,000 deaths a year from some cigarette-related illnesses. Now, each year you need to know, forget this governor, but each year you need to know that the tobacco lawyers put into the coffers of this state over $400 million, which is used for programs to treat our sick, our young, and our elderly. And for that, Fred Levin, you ought to be in my Hall of Fame, because clearly the Boxing Hall of Fame is not big enough for that accomplishment. So that, God bless you. Now I'm going to turn to boxing. I'm not going to talk about the 2020 interview Fred did after we got the big result, and he had a cigarette in one hand and Crown Royal in the other. He was telling this guy what a great thing we did for the state of Florida to stop smoking and make people live right, and then he would take a hit off the double drink. Yeah, I know. We all love that. Fred was a Boxing Writers Association of America Manager of the Year in 1995. Rocky Marciano Foundation President's Award in 2001. He arranged something that Mike McCollum, you got to remember. When you fought for the World Championship here, Harmon fought again. In 1996, Fred said, look, I've only managed one fighter. I said, yeah, but what a fighter he was. You know, some people have heard of Roy Jones Jr. And I said, you know, how many people get the one fighter and they go to the top of the World Championship as quickly as you did? Fred was in that ring, I don't know, 40 or 50 times, and Roy Jones, what he did for his career was amazing. Of course, he had natural talent, but we got to promote. Fred and I decided we were going to promote the fight here in Tampa. So in 1996, he fought Mike McCallum for the light heavyweight championship, and it was televised internationally by HBO. The reason I tell you that, yeah, I didn't get here because I'm a boxer. I had 17 fights as an amateur. I never lost, but so what? Most of y'all never lost. But I got here because I did the Olympics in 2000. But the real reason I got here is because we promoted those fights and we put Tampa back on the boxing map. We had the largest crowd in the history of Florida in 1996 at the Ice Palace. There were 15,000 people come to see the game we love. And then in 2001, we decided it was so much fun, we did it again with Harmon. And Jones, of course, won the fight against Harmon. That year, we put in 15,500 just to beat the record. That's not why I tell you the story. You know, boxing has gotten a bad name because of a few bad people. And boxers get just absolutely exploited. Fred and I went to the Children's Cancer Center. We said we want to help pediatric cancer. We're a couple boxing promoters. What can we do? We'll give you our promoter's fee. And they said, well, you know, we've had that tune sung before. There's never any net. The promoters never have a net. I won't mention any names, but a couple you know came in and said the same thing. So Fred, God bless Fred, he said, let's give him $100,000, guarantee it, and give him whatever promoter's fee we make. Well, it's a good thing we gave him the $100,000 because we didn't make a dime. We lost a lot of money, but that's okay. Fred got Roy to fight John Ruiz. You'll have to remember that, when he stepped up and won the heavyweight championship of the world. And then Fred and I think Roy decided that enough was enough, and Fred kind of walked away, and Roy kept at it. Now he's a great announcer, and I hope he's retired. He did Ike Cortez, and when Ike was a champion, I went to the United Nations, and they installed, I got the word right, they installed Fred as a chief of Ghana. I mean, he's the only white chief of Ghana they've ever had. I'm sure the only Jewish white chief of Ghana. And Fred looked pretty good. They put the robes on him and everything, and they put the little crown, and he sat on the stool in the United Nations. I have seen him look more ridiculous, but not very often. The last thing I will say in Fred's behalf is why it's so important to people like Areola, McGirt, McCollum, all of you, the people that I hope support this wonderful thing y'all have done.
Yeah.
I've been here since the beginning, but I feel I've never been alone because of the wonderful support we've gotten from these people. I can tell you right now, I helped and sponsored Fred because Fred's going to give back. Just like all you inductees, we're going to make this thing bigger, we're going to make it better, and we're going to use some of Fred's money and some of my money, and we're going to take care of some of the old boxers, and we're going to get the game where it needs to be, because remember, the last thing I told you is the first thing I remembered from my dad. When I have people in the courtroom and I'm beating up on them bad, there's something that causes me to hesitate a little bit. You know what that was? My dad telling me never hit a guy when he's on the ground. That's why MMA never appealed to me, because of the savagery, because I don't like that. And boxing is such an honorable, noble sport. What do you see boxers do? They leave the man alone until he can defend himself. And when he can't defend himself anymore, what do we do in this game? We stop. Man, that's a great lesson in life. You know, compassion, mercy, and bravery. And for all you new inductees, I want to tell you, the guy I'm about to introduce, I'm proud to call one of my best friends, Fred Levin.
For you I sigh, for you dear only. Why haven't you seen it? I'm all for you, body and soul.
I spend my days hungry.
He was only supposed to take 5 minutes, so I guess he cut into my time. But it's such a wonderful honor to be here. I want to thank Butch and Kathy and all of the Hall of Fame, but it's an undeserved honor. I got into boxing, I was just a fan, in September of 1988 when Roy Jones Sr. came to see me. Said, I want you to represent my son. And I told him that in the business of boxing. And I asked him, why me? There's so many great promoters out there. And he said, because he did not want somebody from the establishment. And I said, how am I going to do this? He said, you'll just learn it through osmosis and whatever you can pick up. Anyhow, like I say, my boxing career started September 1988. And for 15 years, I've had the privilege of promoting and managing Roy Jones Jr. and some others, Ike Quartet, Vince Phillips, and not because of anything I did, but because it was Roy Jones Jr. and every boxer in his right mind wanted to be around him. Now, I tell you it is undeserved because anybody in this room could be standing here. And I want to give you a few quotes. One from Mike McCollum after he and Roy fought here at the Ice Palace. And Mike said Roy Jones Jr., in his opinion, was the greatest fighter of all times. Then, after the second Montel Griffin fight, the Montel Griffin said, I've had the opportunity to spar with the money, anyhow, at a loss, but anyhow, he sparred with Mayweather on a number of occasions, and he said that Roy was so much faster than Floyd Mayweather. And then finally, the International Boxing Digest said that in the 20th century, Roy Jones Jr. was the greatest pound for pound of the whole 20th century. Now, I was with him for 50 fights, and as you can see, there I was running around the ring. You can't, many of you certainly can appreciate what it is when you won the fight and you get in that ring and the excitement and the exhilaration and everything that goes on. I had that opportunity for 50 fights with Roy, some with Ike Quartet, but the things with Roy, 50 fights. He was 49-1 when we parted. We parted after amicably, after the Ruiz fight. Well, actually, one fight after Ruiz, when I realized he was coming off of his heavyweight, coming down, and he just seemed to have lost a little of that speed. I suggested he retire. He didn't want to. So, like I say, we parted amicably. But in those 50 fights, like I say, I can't remember anything more exciting in my life than those 50 times I was jumping around the ring. And the people that I've got to meet because of Roy Jones Jr. and because of the fight game. And I just want to mention one who loved fighting. He loved the sport of boxing, loved the Roy Jones Jr. fights, went to many, many fights with me. He should have been and would have been a great president of the United States, and that was Jack Kemp. But he was at many, many of Roy's fights, and I'm going to close with this remark, and I think you could appreciate it. He said that the most dangerous place in a Roy Jones Jr. ring was after the fight, trying to get between me, Fred Levin, and the camera. Thank you.